The geometry of violence. The Silveridge High cold case. The hallways of Silveridge High had been silent for 12 years, abandoned when the foundation shifted and the walls began to weep moisture. But in the dim, filtered light of the long corridor, the history of the building was written in a language of iron and oxidation. We were not looking for ghosts, we were looking for the bloodstain pattern analysis, BPA, of a crime long buried. Against the pale, flaking paint and the pervasive, ghostly film of chalkboard dust, the blood had aged into a haunting, dark patina. It was a violent geometry, a series of arterial sprays, contact transfers, and cast-off patterns that traced the kinetic energy of a struggle that had ended in a single, brutal moment. The forensic mapping, a hallway in flux. Our team moved with the precision of cartographers that we utilized high-resolution 3D laser scanning to create a digital twin of the hallway. This allowed us to map every crimson droplet in relation to the architectural decay, adjusting for the floor's uneven tilt. The arterial spray. On the wall adjacent to the faculty lounge, we identified a series of rhythmic, parabolic arcs. The concentration of these stains indicated high-velocity impact, by measuring the angles of the stains, $theta equals \arcsin. With $, we calculated the point of origin to be approximately 4 feet off the ground, consistent with an arterial spurt from a carotid injury. The chalkboard dust interface. This was our most critical discovery. The perpetrator had dragged the victim toward the classroom, and the victim had clawed at the slate chalkboard in a final, desperate attempt to anchor themselves. The blood hadn't just dried on the slate. It had mixed with the fine, calcium carbonate dust, creating a unique clot-caking effect. This layer acted as a time capsule, preserving the specific directional force of the victim's hand as they were pulled away. Point 2 to reconstructing the trauma. The kinetic timeline. By analyzing the spacing and shape of the cast-off patterns, the blood flung from a weapon during an arc, we reconstructed the timeline of the struggle. The initial encounter, T0, a low-velocity transfer pattern near the entrance. The attacker and victim were stationary. The patterns were irregular, suggesting a confrontation that began with a verbal dispute. The apex of velocity, T plus 12 seconds. The arterial spray began. We identified impact spatter on the lower lockers. The geometry of these droplets showed the victim was being struck from behind, their body moving in a forced, downward trajectory. The terminal drag, T plus 45 seconds. The blood mixed with the chalkboard dust. The drag pattern showed a transition from heavy fluid to a smear, indicating the victim had lost consciousness, their weight becoming a dead mass that the perpetrator had to pull toward the faculty lounge. 3. The forensic revelation, a pattern of intent. The violence was not erratic, it was clinical. Using stringing analysis, a traditional method now enhanced by computational physics, we extended laser pointers from the stains back to their sources. The intersection point was not in the center of the hall, but precisely calculated to coincide with the faculty lounge's security camera blind spot. The most damning piece of evidence was found on the floor, a circular gap in the blood pool. Through chemical testing, we determined this was not an absence of blood, but a negative imprint. The perpetrator had placed a heavy, rectangular object, likely a briefcase or a ledger, over the blood to hide a specific piece of evidence, possibly a document, before dragging the victim away. For conclusion, decoding the crimson shadows, the static crimson shadows were no longer just stains. They were a mechanical record of a life taken and a secret buried. By calculating the velocity, $v, and trajectory of the iron-rich patterns, we proved that the struggle was not a crime of passion, but a premeditated execution. The chalkboard dust, once a benign element of an educational environment, had become the silent, scientific witness to the perpetrator's movements. We had transformed the decay into a timeline. The geometry of the violence was now clear, a calculated, precise, and brutal erasure of the victim, now permanently etched into the architecture of the abandoned school. The story of the silent witness may have ended in the porcelain doll, but here, in the dust of Silveridge High, we had found the reason for the silence. Does this forensic reconstruction lead us closer to identifying the perpetrator, or shall we analyze the specific chemical composition of the negative imprint to see what was being hidden?